Most men today don't feel strong. They feel tired, disconnected, unsure of who they are supposed to be. But the problem isn't masculinity. The problem is that no one ever showed us what real biblical strength is. So, what does the Bible have to say about strength? Hey, everybody, my name is Donald Schroed. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to go over 5 different traits of what biblical strength actually looks like, especially for men. First thing I want to go over is responsibility. So often I see individuals shirking responsibility. They're blaming everything else. And to a certain extent, you can, right? You can blame culture for how it's failed to foster men or take men in or accept men in any way. But the blame has to stop someplace. And there has to be a certain part of men where they stop and they're like, hey, I'm gonna take responsibility for both myself and my actions and what God has given me to steward. So strength is stewardship, right? It's not control. It's God gave me something and I'm going to steward it well. And in doing so, it's going to be revealed in my life, not just my strength, but the strength that God has given to me. I think when we avoid responsibility, it feels like freedom. And I've talked about it before. The culture kind of highlights or emphasizes or glorifies the slacker, the I'm not going to take responsibility. It highlights a lot of the deficits that a lot of millennials and Gen Z are brought up in, meaning, all right, well, the housing crisis. How am I ever going to buy a house? Or oh, look at the economy. What am I going to do about that? Or oh, look what boomers left me. I don't have anything because of the boomers. And that's so glorified. And there is a part of it that you have to acknowledge that because there is a part of that that is true, but you don't live in that place because that's a place where victims stay. You have to be in that place where it's like, okay, this is true, but now what do I do about it? What can I steward that I have right now? What's in front of me? What has God given me that I can acknowledge that I have, and what can I do with that? And in that, you feel that sense of responsibility. You feel that sense of, okay, there's actually strength rising up in me because God made men a certain kind of way, right? Where responsibility actually brings out who they are. Again, I think that so much of modern culture wants to teach men, oh, avoid responsibility. Whose fault is that really? Who can you pass the buck off to? Who can you blame? But when you do that, when you avoid responsibility, although it feels like freedom maybe upfront, it's actually eventually emptying you. And you see that in men that they might be closing in on 40, but they're still the same guy that they were when they were 17. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. But part of it was that they were never actually taught how to take responsibility. And maybe they thought that if they took responsibility, they would be to blame and they would be punished. But sometimes you just kind of have to embrace it. Often you take responsibility for something, you might not be punished for it, but even if you are, it's empowering that you are the one that took it on yourself. So when it comes to men in themselves, right? Their health, their body, their family, their mental health, their spirit, what they do with their faith, that's no one's responsibility but their own. And once you embrace that aspect of this is me and this is what I'm going to steward well, you actually see strength rising up in you. The answer isn't shirking responsibility and throwing it off. The answer is what can I be responsible for in myself? I think a second trait of strong men, especially strong men in the faith, is a strong man rules his inner life. I think again, culture glorifies your truth. Do what you want, do what you feel. It doesn't matter. All truth is subjective. And that's kind of leaked into men acting whatever they want, whenever they feel, whenever, whatever time, thinking, oh, that's true strength. Well, I don't know. I just felt like doing it. Okay, well, why'd you do that? Oh, I don't know. I just felt like it. Okay, but just because you felt like it, that's not the highest truth, and that can't be a truth that you're led by. Because if you're led by that, that's just going to lead to your own harm, your own destruction. And when I talk about like a man ruling his inner life, I'm not talking about suppression. I'm not talking about it's not emotional chaos either, right? I think about Talladega Nights when he's talking about like, hey, it should be great if I won. He's like, yeah, but if you won, how would I win? He's like, yeah, you're right. And he's like, he's like, why don't you go ahead and push that down? You're right. I'm gonna push that way down. It hurts. So many men have learned that there's not space for how they feel, or they don't know how to navigate how they feel. that they go ahead and they just suppress it and they push it down. And all of a sudden they wonder why they're addicted to alcohol, why they're addicted to going on the computer late at night when their wife is asleep, right? So what we understand is that ruling your inner life isn't suppressing it, but it's also not giving into it. It's not blowing up every single time you feel like it. You don't get your way. It's not crying at the drop of a hat just because you're again not getting your way. I think so many men think that, well, if I'm being honest with what I feel like, it looks like a child throwing a tantrum. And when you see men throwing tantrums a lot, just imagine that man when he was 12 years old. It probably looks the same way. The reason is that he never learned how to cope. He never learned how to deal. He never learned how to navigate his emotions at that age, and so he's emotionally stunted. So what it means to rule your inner life is that he can feel, like a man can feel what he's feeling, but he doesn't crumple under it. That strength is ruling the spirit. It's not being ruled by emotion. A fruit of the spirit that the Holy Spirit gives you is self-control. You're like, well, what does self-control look like? What does it look like ruling your inner life? Well, when it comes to your emotions, to what you're feeling, the pain you feel, men are very good at shouldering pain but never doing anything with it, then wondering why they're addicted to so many things. Well, there's a lot of different aspects you can do to take care of that. One of them is journaling, sitting down, actually journaling out what you're feeling. I once heard that good journaling is that if somebody ever found your journal, you would be ruined because you're so honest in it. You're just letting it all out, regardless if it makes sense. You're letting it out. So many guys don't know how to let it out. And so they just kind of sink themselves into their jobs, sink themselves into doom scrolling all day long. No, sometimes you have to actually face what you're feeling if you're going to master what's inside. If you're going to practice that fruit of the Holy Spirit, which is self control, you have to actually confront the thing you need to have control over, right? So, again, what that looks like is journaling. It looks like being open with other men, sitting down with somebody you trust and actually opening up and talking about it. Opening up to God. Like, when was the last time you went out, took a walk, and you opened up to God about what was really in your heart? I think it's been diminished in our culture saying, "Oh, like weak men do that. That's not what real men do. They don't share about their emotions." Emotions are a big basis of your psychology. It's natural, and God put that in you for a reason. He didn't give it to you for you to ignore it. He also didn't give it to you for you to act out in your emotions all the time either. There's a balance, and that balance comes from surrendering that pain to God, opening up to other men that you respect, that you can trust, and talk to them about it. It looks like journaling it, and it looks like, hey, actually, I think this has actually been like hurting me for a long time. But in talking to another man that you trust, you realize, oh, it's actually not that bad, or oh, actually, I misunderstood that. Iron sharpens iron, and when you're in a community of brotherhood, which we can talk about more in a second, you actually sense that, oh, I'm not out of control. My emotions are just because I'm hurting. I take care of the pain. All of a sudden, I'm better. Sometimes men walk around with like the equivalent of a broken arm, and they're hiding it and they're wondering why they're not getting better. You have to diagnose and treat what's hurting you if you're going to get better. And it's not just for yourself, it's for your community, it's for your family. Believe me, your girlfriend, your wife, they will thank you that you actually took the time to take care of yourself. Proverbs 16:32 says, "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit is better than he who takes a city." I think about Jesus doing that parable, talking about if you're faithful in a little bit, you'll be faithful in much. And when he, right, the minas, the guys who were taking care of this little bit of money, and if they did well with it, the Lord came back and he gave them a whole city to rule over. I think a lot of men aren't walking in what they're meant to walk in because they're not stewarding what's happening in their own hearts. Men who steward their hearts, deal with the pain, and actually let out what they want in life and go after it, I think God blesses that because it's God who put those dreams in your heart in the first place. But if you don't steward your inner life and you always act out, you're never actually going to embrace what the Lord has for you. A third trait that I wanted to talk about is a strong man can stand under pressure without becoming hardened. Pressure reveals formation. Every guy can talk about how much pressure he's been under. I'm talking about like right pressure, not taking on too much responsibility, thinking you're strong because of it, taking on other people's drama, taking on things that you shouldn't. I'm talking about like the day to day life, your family, what's going on in your family, your wife, your job. what's going on with the house, what's going on with what you want, what's going on with your, like, again, career. When you stand under that pressure and you don't crumple, right? You deal with that pressure in a right way, which is surrendering it to God and bringing it to your brothers in prayer. You actually have a pressure that forms you. It doesn't break you. So many men think they're in the breaking process, and a lot of times they're actually in the forming process, but God has to use that pressure to break down the things that aren't of him so he can build the things in you that are from him. I think in the midst of pressure, a lot of men, it says, right? I said, men who can stand under pressure without becoming hardened. A lot of men go through pressure and they don't navigate it well, and they just become jaded. They become hard men, mean men. They become bullies to their own family. Uh, a sign of strength in a Christian man is that you go through all that pressure, you go through all that, and yet you aren't hardened, and yet you aren't jaded. I once heard that the kind people you see in life are probably the strongest because they dealt with similar pressures, probably that like you went through in a different way, but in doing so, it didn't get to them and they came out the other end stronger, walking in forgiveness, walking in kindness still, regardless of what happened to them. That world could punch them and push them down all the ways that it already has, but still they got up and they were kind. Which brings me to a soft heart and a strong spine. Jesus had a very strong spine. He stood up to the religious order. He stood up to Rome. He stood up to the empire that was occupying Israel. But yet he still had compassion and a soft heart, and he took care of those who were in need. At the end of the day, I can talk about different traits that make a man all I want, but it's Jesus. And when you see a clear picture of who Jesus was in the Gospels, and who he is today, you see, oh, this is what real masculinity, real strength looks like. And that's the strength that Jesus wants to give to you when you surrender your life to him. Men who go through pressure, but they don't become jaded or hardened by it, they have endurance without cynicism, which is difficult. It's so easy to be cynical, but oftentimes cynicism and being cynical is just complaining about things you don't have control over. And you feel like if you complain about it all the time, you have a sense of control over it, because you're afraid of what you don't have control over is going to hurt you. Endurance looks like, no, I'm going to endure this regardless, and I'm not going to give in to complaining. A good opposite of complaining is just prayer to Jesus. You stop complaining all the time when you give it over to God. When I think about endurance, I think about The Dark Knight, that Batman movie where he's talking to Alfred. The Joker is like running havoc in the city. They can't keep up with him. There's confusion everywhere. And Bruce Wayne's venting to Alfred. He's like, like, what do we do? All this is happening. And Alfred just says, endure. And as an 18-year-old watching that movie in theaters, that's only stuck with me. It's like, well, what do I do though? Like, I want to give into being cynical. I want to give up. I don't know what to do with all the pressure, and I feel like it's breaking me. I feel like it's coming down on me, and I can't handle it. You endure, right? The scriptures say, having done all, stand. I think when men don't see the results they want as fast as they want to give into bitterness, give into anger, give into giving up. But what they actually need to do is just stand and rest, and know that what they're doing is the right thing. That sometimes you can do all the right things, but you don't get what you want right away. And you might not get what you want at all, but in doing those things, you are still doing the right thing. And that is such a hard lesson for men to do. They think, I've done all the right things, therefore I'm entitled to the solution. I'm entitled to the right thing happening. But what happens in life if you do all the right things and you still don't get it? That is such a forming time you have with God. Because God's like, you could do A, B, and C, thinking that you should get everything that you feel entitled to. And even if you don't, will you turn from me? And if you don't turn from God, become bitter, become jaded, God actually reveals that character necessary in your life that's needed for him to bring you to the next season of life. The promotions that God has for you are often found on the other side of pressure and embracing the character he's building in you. Trials shape men. They don't excuse bitterness. So we have in James 1, verses 2 through 4, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. All right, so number four for the traits for strong men. A strong man submits to God before he tries to lead anyone else. Submission is alignment, not weakness. Culture teaches us to never submit, never surrender. If we submit, we're giving into weakness. But culture is also saying that you of yourself, you in and of yourself, is the most that's ever needed. That you are your own God. That you are the highest law in your life. That you're in control no matter what. And it's so popular because it flatters the ego, but it's just a lie that leads to death. You need to submit to something. Everybody submits to something. You need to be the man that submits to Jesus. There's nothing wrong with submitting to a greater authority that wants your best in mind. Jesus is king that wants your best in mind. That's why he gave himself for you. So when you submit to him, you're actually aligning yourself with the plan that God has for your life. So many men want to resist God thinking they're stronger for it, but they're leading a life of weakness. A weak life is always running from God. A surrendered life is a true life of strength, a true life of peace, a life surrendered to the King. Authority flows from obedience. In that place of submission where you finally surrender and you submit yourself to Jesus, all of a sudden his authority comes through your life in those circumstances you felt like were out of control. Let's talk about storms that are happening in your life. You don't know how to navigate them. You don't know how to bring peace to the storm. All of a sudden you surrender to the Prince of Peace. You have this newfound strength, this newfound perspective on what's happening, and all of a sudden authority comes through you to quiet those storms in your life because you're not relying on yourself to be the source of it all. You're relying on Christ to be your source in the midst of everything that's happening in your life. When you submit to God, it's leading without submission produces ego, burnout, or control. I see so many young leaders who want the mic, right? I'm talking about in church ministry. So many young guys that want the mic, thinking that's going to give them all of a sudden this endowment of authority that's going to give them everything they need to be validated in their life as a man. But in doing so, when they haven't submitted to the Lord, they're just actually leading to their own downfall because pride enters in, burnout enters in. They run themselves ragged, trying to keep up something that maybe God didn't have for them yet. What you don't earn by grace and receive freely from God, you are going to keep by your own efforts and your own works. And it might look good on social media for a second, but over time it is going to wear you out and you're going to want to give up on all of it. And worst case scenario, you try giving up the faith because you're thinking, oh, all this burnout is must be equivalent to what Jesus is doing for me. It's like, no, this isn't Jesus's fault that you're burning out. It's that you were trying to self-promote yourself when God was still trying to raise you up and train you up. See, Jesus even said, it's not my will, but yours be done. I think about when the angel came to Mary, telling her that she's going to have a child. What'd she say? She said, may it be unto me according to your word. That's surrender. That's submission to a higher authority. Luke 22:42 says, Father, if it is your will, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. That's what Jesus said to God when he was at one of his hardest moments before the crucifixion. Like, this is difficult. Let this pass from me. But even in feeling that way, not my will, your will be done. Men who are in submission can do that. They can be like, this is what I want. But if it doesn't happen, not my will, your will be done. And in that place, you find the peace that sustains you through whatever storm. It's the anchor through whatever storm you're going through. The next thing we have here is, I guess, number five. We're already at number five. A strong man does not walk alone. I've talked about this before, and I talked about it earlier in the video about having a brotherhood. Isolation is not strength. We've glorified in movies and again in culture that the self-made man, that I can do it on my own no matter what. I'm a lone wolf. I don't need the pack. And again, I'm going to say it, a lone wolf dies alone. So many young men I had back when I was in Job Corps wanted to be the tough guy, wanted to be the guy that I can do whatever I want. I don't need anybody. I don't and they think they're so awesome for it. And often it's just a hurting boy. It's just a hurting boy that is scared and terrified, shaking in his boots. He doesn't know what to do because he was never raised with an authority that loved him. He was never raised with a proper proper strength that was there for him. And so he thought he could be tough by being a self-made man. In the end, it never worked out, because every man who ever got to the places God called him to be was somebody who learned how to surrender to a brotherhood, surrender to other men in his life, and they could actually help raise him up. Again, iron sharpens iron. If you want to be dull iron, you stay alone. If you want to be sharp iron, something that's actually useful, something that gets to the point, no pun intended, you have to be somebody who submits to brothers in their life, to a community of brotherhood, because brotherhood is formation. Being around other men, you have that forming in your life. Lone wolf Christianity is a modern myth. Men are refined in community. I once heard a criticism about homeschool. I'm not talking about homeschool. I don't really even know what my opinions all the time on homeschooling are. But I heard that there's often an issue in homeschooling where boys need to be around classmates in public school to be formed into individuals that can be uh, productive citizens in society. But if they're always just alone and their only forming is mom, they aren't going to be productive citizens in society. And I've noticed that you can kind of take that with men of any age. If they are only alone, only on Reddit, only on 4chan, only on their Discord groups talking about Fortnite, but they don't actually have a in-person community where they can be opened up with, or that they can open up to rather. They aren't going to be formed into anything significant. They're not going to be formed into the man God created them to be. That in Christianity, there's no such thing as lone wolfing it. In Christianity, God set up the whole system, the whole religion, the whole way of life to be with other people. And it's not just selfishly, so like, oh, I'm going to be with other people so they can get me where I'm going. No, that's a Los Angeles mentality of trying to get ahead of everybody else. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who's willing to submit to a brotherhood and letting them shape them just as you shape them. Uh, Ecclesiastes 4, two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. I think that's something that we admire when it comes to the military, that the men that come back from war have a unbreakable bond and strength that can't be broken, because literally the guy who had your back kept you alive. Sometimes we need to treat our day-to-day life in the same way, that you need brothers who have your back for you to stay alive in your day-to-day life. And maybe not like physically alive, but you know what I mean, like to have your dreams stay alive, that you're actually going to be a healthy dad someday, or a healthy dad now. You're going to be a healthy husband, that you're vulnerable in things and you let men shape you. So I just want to say to everybody, like, if you don't feel strong right now, I'm not trying to shame you. You're not failing. Most men were never taught what strength actually is. A lot of times our dads did our best, but some of you might have not have had a dad at home, or you might have had a disconnected dad, or a dad who only showed you anger. And so you don't really understand what a strength bigger than you is for you to lean on. But let me tell you right now that the strength is formed and is not discovered overnight. And it's something that God brings you into. So if you're a man who's wanting more strength in his life, or if any one of these areas I talked about, you feel like, oh, I'm lacking in that, I need more of that, then I want you to do something. I want you tonight, you don't have to do it right now, or you can do it right now if you want. You pray to God. It'd be like, God, I've always known you to be there, but I actually want you to be a father. I want you to be a father to me and raise me up in the ways that you desire. I prayed that, and God led me down a long journey that turned me into the man that I didn't know I could be. I didn't know that I needed. But in submitting to God and having God lead my life that way, I eventually became the man I needed to be the husband I am today, to be the father that I am today, both a father in the faith and a physical dad that I have kids now. But that comes from submitting to God, letting Him be your father, and then turning to a community of men amongst the other traits that I talked about. In that place, is it easy? No. But once you're in that place, you'll never want to give it up. You'll never want to turn back, because it's literally, I want to say life changing, but it is life. It is what life is. So, anyways, guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and comment down below. Give the video a like. Go ahead and share it. It helps the channel out a lot. We are trying to grow things because we are trying to reach more men with the message of identity found in Jesus Christ. All right, guys. See you next time.